Here's a game from the 2017 George E. O'Rourke Memorial that was played on February 22nd, 2017. My opponent was Michael Commisso, who is currently rated 1644. I'm currently a Class A player. We went ahead and played into a classical Pirc, and we'll go ahead and take a look at that. He opened E4, I played B6, D4, knight F6, knight C3, G6, knight F3. So this move, knight F3, is what decides that we're going to go into the classical Pirc versus any other of the variations that are possible. Very normal move, probably the most often seen as far as the databases go. Nice, solid move. Bishop G7, Bishop E3. Now this move is actually somewhat unique. Maybe not unique. It's definitely still played. It's a very playable move. Matthew Sadler and Vasily Ivanchuk went into a variation using this, and obviously they're top level GMs. So it's not that it's a bad move. It's just not typical that you're going to see both knight F3 and Bishop E3 right here in the opening. Usually if you want to play Bishop E3, you want to have the option of playing either F3 or F4 so that you can have a strong kingside attack. And that's the idea that you have behind playing Bishop E3, is that you're going to have a kingside attack, and that's the idea of this move, is having that developed and producing a strong kingside attack. And usually you might even consider castling long, so that you can send all of your pawns and have a really fast, devastating attack. But this knight, as you can tell, is stopping the F pawn from moving, and so you can see that can be a difficulty in trying to work around the position. Now, there's nothing wrong with it. As I said, high-level players have played it before. It's just not necessarily the move that is most conducive to having a clear idea of what plan you want to have. So I went ahead and castled here, and actually that's a little bit of a misstep for me. Castling here isn't bad by any means. It's a very playable variation, but the move that I should have been looking at was A6. I'll show you later why I would have wanted to have A6. But the idea is A6 followed by B5, and I've got a nice little setup here. It beats down on this bishop a little bit, and I also have the idea of being able to play B4, taking the knight. This would have been a better setup for me. I would have preferred to have the pawn moved up and ready to go, as the A pawn kind of gets in my way in a little bit. So he plays queen to D2. The idea behind this is that these two are going to be able to exchange off this bishop. And actually, so this isn't even the game. This is the side variation, but my opponent, Mike, does end up playing queen D2 in the position that we played. So you can see that the difference between these two is fairly similar in the game. So this is the side variation. Here's a choice that White would have had to make. So this is the setup I should have been aiming for, with the knight here. Pieces developed. Option to put the bishop here would have been slightly preferable to the game. But we'll go ahead and take a look at the actual game. I went ahead and castled. He brought the queen to D2. As I said, the idea is that you're going to try and trade off this bishop. I played C6. Now this is a little slower, and it also doesn't allow my knight to come to C6, and that would have been a nice square for my knight at different points in time. And you'll see I have to do some moving around with my knight to try and find a good square for it, because I've taken it away with this move. Now C6 is very normal when you're playing the Pirc, but as I said, in this position, in this setup, it would have preferred to have played A6 here as well. He plays bishop up. The idea behind this bishop move is that I'm going to be coming down here with my b pawn, and there was, prior to the bishop moving, only one defender here. So only the knight's defending. If I push my b pawn up, there's no defenders, and that's a free pawn, and free pawns drop off. So I played b5, and my opponent castles here. Here we are at move 8. The computer is evaluating the position at point 1, which is fairly close to equality as far as black goes. We are still in book territory with games by Alexei Shirov and Michael Adams being played from this position, as well as moves from Mamayarov and Kamsky. So still fully in the world of normal move, and actually, sadly, I was the first to break with book. This is a novelty here, playing bishop a6. Bishop a6 is, in my opinion, a mistake. I had ideas for it. My plan was I wanted to trade off this bishop, develop my knight, catch up with development, kick this knight, and possibly win a pawn. All of those ideas are silly. And you'll notice that this pawn right here is kind of trapped. And that really is making it challenging for me to do some of the things that I want to do. So again, playing the a6 move earlier would have made me a little happier. So here's our novelty. And now white has regained some advantage here. Point 8 is what they're considering. So white went ahead and played knight e2, giving back some of the advantage, according to the computer. So we'll ignore the computer from here on out for the most part, and just take a look at the game and the positions that we have. But so e5 right away was the idea here to penalize me for putting my pieces on passive squares. Here we are starting that attack. Now, back at the idea of the classical, the idea of the classical variation on the Pirc is that you're going for e5. And so, as I said earlier on, the idea of having the knight and bishop here is a little bit confusing as far as what's your plan. What are you trying to accomplish? Normally, if you're going to play the bishop out, you're going for a kingside attack. If you're playing the knight out, you're playing for having this early e5 push as soon as you possibly can. And so, by having both of these out, white isn't quite sure what his plan is, and you can see Mike struggles with this in coordinating his pieces into a constructive plan. He plays defense extremely well in this game, but as the white pieces with the setup, he should be taking it to me, and he allows me far too much counterplay as far as being able to counterattack. So let's go ahead and continue looking at the position. I played the questionable move, bishop a6. He preemptively went knight to e2, anticipating that I'm going to play the bishop, the pawn up, and didn't want to give me a chance to kick the knight and recapture with the pawn here, I suppose, or recapture with the bishop. So he takes and I take, and so I was feeling pretty good. I've developed a piece. I've all but caught up with development. I'm castled. I have 1, 2, 3 pieces developed. He has 4, and I'm fighting back with some space. But you'll notice that I'm still really disappointed with this pawn. What I want to do, but I can't, is push that pawn and protect it. That's what I want to do. But you'll notice that there's a knight in the way. And so I'm going to keep going back to the idea that I really should have played a6 earlier on in that early variation. So hopefully, by repeating it to you and repeating it to myself, that I'll learn that that's the proper place to play. So he plays c6, countering this pawn. Obviously, my entire idea was that this pawn right here is weak. And so it looks free right now, doesn't it? But as you can tell, it's not really free. If I take it here, let's take a look at the new variation. If I take that pawn, he can go ahead and play queen. And what happens? I lose. Or at least I lose material, and losing material is never good, especially against a good opponent who's playing well. Those two knights, I can't move them to defend each other without losing too much material. So that was a nice little tactic that Mike saw to maintain control on the e4 pawn. So I went ahead and played rook to b8. Rook b8 here. I pulled it over to add protection here. So rook b8, and he plays queen up, protecting the pawn now and threatening the knight. I pulled the queen up to protect the knight, and he played c4. c4 saying, well, if you don't want to take the pawn, I'm going to take more control over the center. I played the knight back, so pulling the knight back with the idea of having some options about where to go with the knight, possibly adding the knight here, trying to, with the big idea that I'm going to push this pawn, and having the pawn on this square and the knights and the queens all there, there's a lot of impact right now going on c5. c5 is a real key square. Because if I can make this d-pawn move, my bishop becomes a monster bishop, and everybody wants to have a monster bishop. So he plays a3, trying to kind of dictate the course of the game. If these pawns start coming, he might have a pawn advantage over here on the queen side, and if he can have his pieces with space, it might diffuse some of my attack. I played c5 here right away. As I said, I want a monster bishop. He plays knight f4, so that seems a little bit questionable. I know why he did it. He had the idea that if he comes here, he's hitting the queen, he's hitting the pawn, and it either makes me retreat the queen or lose a pawn, with check no less. So not a terrible idea, but boy, is that pawn is just, that's never going to move. And with all of these pieces over here, he's spending a lot of time defending over on the queen side. And what did we say that the plan was for white? We said that it was either going to be play e5 or have a king side attack. At no point did he really consider playing this h-pawn down. Well, he considered it at different points, but he didn't really consider it strong enough and fast enough. He's already reduced his ability to play this battery. He set up this battery early on and never pulled the trigger. You can see that this bishop is going to be a really impactful piece. And early on, it would have been better if he would have just traded it away, probably even before castling. So here we go. We keep moving forward. I played my knight back, stopping this threat on d5, and we'll keep going. He took the b pawn with the a pawn here, and I recaptured with the queen. Now, maybe fine, maybe not. I'm threatening to take this pawn here, but not really. There's a couple points when it looks like I should be able to take it, that it doesn't feel like it's quite ready to. So he plays bishop d2, and they're saying this is where the position swings to my favor. So right now, taking the b pawn isn't really something I can do because the rook can come over, obviously. And let's see. Oh, so the recommendation here was to take the pawn, threaten the knight, and maintain a slight advantage. So I played the queen back when he played bishop to d2, and he played bishop c3. I took the pawn here. There's a nice idea of having a pawn fork here, where I'm going to win whatever recaptures. And so that's really good for me. And what that ends up meaning is that this bishop can't stay here, and the bishop can't take. So he ends up playing bishop a5. Now, notice the maneuver that he just did. He just went from bishop d2 to bishop c3 to bishop a5. He could have just played bishop a5 right now, and it would have saved him a tempo and having a pawn still on that square. So it also means that I wouldn't have had the c5 square open for the maneuver that I'm about to play. So he plays the slow move. Again, he's playing very defensive, but he doesn't have an active plan for himself right now. So right here, this move says that black's got a slight advantage, and I step back, and he captures he captures here on the knight. And so I happened to have an opportunity to chat with him after the game, and he said he'd already even written down the move, queen takes bishop. And that was what he was anticipating. He thought, okay, I'm going to trade my bishop for his knight, and I don't go for that idea. I instead play the in-between mover, the intermezzi, knight to c5, hitting the queen, saying that if you want, we can go for this really messy game where you don't have a queen and I lose a couple pieces. And he goes for it, and he says it was definitely an interesting game. Even if he hadn't decided to take here, it probably would have been fairly even. It would have been a long strategic game where there's fairly balance in the position. But instead, he takes, I take, and here's the key difference: is he doesn't have time to save this bishop. This bishop is mine. I get to take it because I'm threatening to take on. I'm threatening here on f4 to take the knight. And even if he tries to save it, I get it. I get one of these two pieces. So instead of getting 3 pieces for the queen, he's only getting 2 for the queen. And that's just not enough compensation. And as you'll see, the strength of having the bishop and the queen working together is just too much. If he'd been able to maintain one of these 2 pieces, or maintain both those pieces, he probably would have had enough to outmaneuver me. But by taking here, it allows me to take, and I also have the tempo here on threatening this pawn. This pawn is loose, and this one, while protected right now, is a target. So I have 2 targets. He plays the knight back, and I went ahead and said, well, I'm going to attack there, so that if I recapture, I get this pawn. I want pawns. Pawns are yummy. If you don't have any pawns and I have pawns, that means I have baby queens in the making. So he defends it. And I went ahead and played a very kind of slow idea here. In reality, I probably should have went ahead and just took. I was looking at a line that said that I would have been better off just capturing there now and taking the pawn and having some advantage there. But I just couldn't see through it all the way. I just didn't have the calculation depth to see that it was a clear advantage. I was even looking at ideas of sacking the rook on the b pawn here, trying to work out a way to clean up and have a finished game. So instead I played a slower move. I wanted to maintain this pawn. And you'll notice that this pawn ends up being, it ends up weighing on Mike's mind quite a bit, in that when all of these other pieces go away, if we had no other pieces on the board, this pawn ends up being really, really strong as a passed pawn, especially once the b pawn falls. So he plays e5. e5 finally comes. Probably should have happened somewhere closer to the middle game as opposed to now as we head towards an end game. I'm forced to recapture. He recaptures, and I grab the pawn. So grabbing the pawn here was good for me. I threatened to win the knight here. I've got 2, 1, 2. He's got 1 defender. So that's possibly my piece. And I also have the queen that's protecting this passed pawn right now. Notice that all of our maneuvering right now is centered around this idea of my passed pawn. It's not centered around his passed pawn, because he has a passed pawn, but it's all centered around my passed pawn. So what are his rooks doing right now? His rooks are sitting on the back row, playing defense. What are my strong pieces doing? I have a queen and the bishop both playing offense. So I am definitely the one with the initiative here, and I'm dictating a lot of how this game goes. Now, if he had been able to move his rook over, I'm not saying that's the best move, but it's a plan. Move his rook over with the idea of pushing this pawn down, it would have changed the way I would have had to interact with the game. Because I can't let this queen any more than he can let mine queen. So here we go. And at this point, the computer's evaluating this position at 3 to black. So this is definitely a nice, strong position for me at this point in time. So he plays the knight over, protecting the knight, attacking the pawn here. He now has 2 attackers on it, and I play a nice move, bishop g7. He can't take. If he takes here, I'm able to recapture the knight, and if he takes with the rook, I'm able to capture the knight anyway, and he's not able to recapture, because then he'll drop the rook. So I'm able to defend this pawn through this knight, and so he shifts over, attacks the pawn a second time. It's now attacked 3 times and defended twice, so I have to move it. By moving it, I shift the focus. It's no longer all of his pieces were set up and attacking right here, and now his knights aren't doing anything. They're not nearly as effective as they were a moment ago. So there's the problem with having knights, is they take a couple of moves to get to attack the squares you want to attack with. They're great pieces, but they can't move from left to right on the board very quickly, and they have a difficulty in dictating and controlling the position. So he plays the rook over to kick my queen, and I just shift over. Now I'm attacking his pawn, and he can't capture here. So he can't capture here with the rook because I have the queen on his rook, and his rooks right now, because they've been so passive, if either one of them try and get active right now, they get a little loose. So he pulls the knight over, attacks the queen, and finally overwhelms most of my attack on, or my defense regarding the d-pawn. So I move the queen, I grab the pawn, and he finally is able to capture. And this isn't a bad place to move the rook, because you could stack the rooks and maybe have some sort of attack going on. But the problem is that all of these pieces right now aren't terribly coordinated. Here's a loose piece. This one isn't defended by anything. So I play rook b8 with the idea that I am attacking this undefended rook. Notice that this was an undefended piece. What do you do when your opponent has a weakness? You attack that weakness. So this knight, undefended by anything but a rook, which is undefended. And so I have 2 pieces attacking this knight. He has 1 defending it. If he moves the knight away, the rook is mine behind it. So he is forced to defend. So he's still defending. He's got his rooks connected, and they're stacked up nicely, but it's still playing defense. And so I'm go ahead with the idea of a5. a5, kicking this knight out of the way, and if he'd done anything else other than pulling knight to d2, it probably would have been worse for him. So I played the move queen e6. Queen e6 still is attacking this rook. I've got the two pieces attacking on the rook, and the knight here is not in a strong position to do much about it. And so he pulls the knight away. I recapture, and he captures with the knight. Probably, I don't know. Recapturing with the knight isn't a bad idea, but it still runs into the problems that his rook is fairly passive. He's got a piece in the way. Sure, and maybe the idea is that he's attacking this pawn, but he's not really being terribly impactful with that attack because these two pieces are unable to protect each other right now. So he's forced to defend. And by defending here, especially the way that he's defended, he's opened up his rook for a check on my king. And I went ahead and played queen c2. Queen c2, again, I'm showing a strong advantage here of about 0.45 with the idea that right now I've got a mate threat. And so the game could have continued with check. Yeah, we'll take a look at how this could have ended. It could have been check, and the bishop comes down, and then he's forced to do some maneuvering with this knight, either playing h3 or g3, trying to give his king a square to run to. But when it's all said and done, this pawn is going to be a really strong piece that he spends most of his time trying to deal with. I've got a bishop that can move from both sides of the board, and his knights just have a hard time defending everything at the same time. Now, instead of playing queen to c2, the recommended line was for me to play bishop h6, attacking this knight, and we'll just look at the different variation here and how the game could have gone. And obviously, going up a queen versus a rook isn't necessarily an easy game, but being up two pawns, it's a fairly clear, easy victory. Also, at this point, as we were finishing the game, Mike was just under about 10 minutes, and I still had about 20-25 minutes. So, let me check the score sheet here. Yeah, Mike, when he resigned, he had about 8.5 minutes, and I still had 22 minutes. So at this point, I had a time advantage in addition to a material advantage and a much more active position. It takes time to find those strong defensive moves. And so at this point, I had the position that was fairly clear, and Mike decided to resign in this position. Even though there was play left, I think it was a foregone conclusion. And so I appreciate the game that Mike gave me, and I'm glad that the game went as it did.